Welcome to Bright Connections. I'm here today with three panelists and two of our local middle school students who are going to lead a discussion with our panelists. But before we get started, I would like to introduce our panelists, who we are and where we're from. I'd like to introduce Evan Simmons. Evan is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has worked with children, teens, young adults, and families in LA and Ventura County for the past 10 years. He specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy and utilizes other therapeutic modalities to address various mental health concerns. I can talk.
Perfect.
Sabrina Rodriguez is currently in her second year as the president of the Board of Education for Ventura County Unified School District. Ms. Rodriguez holds a BS in Science and Ecology from UC Irvine and a master's degree in Conservation Biology from the University of Kent, Canterbury in the UK. She has lived and worked in Latin America, Europe, and Africa, helping communities to build their biological resources while providing sustainable income for families. She is a mom to two daughters, Bella and Lola, both recent high school graduates and currently enrolled in college. She is dedicated to ensuring that this generation of young people have the academic and personal skills to achieve their brightest futures, one that includes combating social inequalities, climate change, and mental illness. And I'd like to say hi to Michael. Michael Morissette is a non-clinician whose community involvement has given him the opportunity to work as an outreach coordinator for Give an Hour in the Ventura County area. Michael comes into the mental health environment through his own lived experience, which has thrown him into advocating to change the culture of mental health so that all of those in need can receive the care and support they deserve. Thank you for joining us, panelists. Chris, Leave, take it away.
So I can offer to go first, if that's all right. So my first question was all about like mental health and like well-being. It happened a lot for me. I went through the state of depression and I still struggle with body image and just looking at yourself on the outside, like circumstances. And a lot of my friends have been coming to me with the same problem, asking, who's your therapist? Who do you talk to? Because I've been having horrible thoughts about myself and I just don't feel good. So how should I approach the situation and what should I say to help them?
Okay. I think I'll jump off on that one. First off, I think thank you so much for even asking that question and being so vulnerable to kind of even touch on these subjects. I feel like even as adults, these are often very difficult subjects for us to talk about. And one of the main things that I think you already named and I want to really encourage and highlight is the piece of being open with your communication. And so if your friends are asking who is your therapist or do you even know what a therapist is, really being able to kind of share that information with your friends. And for those who don't necessarily have those answers, being able to find a trusted adult, whether it's a parent or caretaker or somebody that you know from school, whether it is your counselor or your teacher, that you can ask one of your Zoom meetings after class or beforehand, or even just their office hours. So that way then they can help you find the words to maybe get your friends the right connections and right help in your community, or maybe just find the words of how to be an encouraging friend and how you can support in that way. Because sometimes our friends will come to us and it'll feel like in the moment, oh, this is really, really big, or it might feel really, really small. And it's not our place to judge that. So being able to be that open, just kind of sounding board where your friends can come to you and talk to you is awesome. And then being able to just know where your threshold is, where you can say, hey, that was really a lot for me to handle. I don't really have any more answers or don't know how to help right now, but I want to continue this conversation some other day, or here's some information for some other individuals or adults I think would be great for you to be able to talk to. Obviously, every situation is different and it depends on kind of what your friends are going to. But I think definitely when it comes to some of the depression being felt because of the pandemic and being virtual, and then especially like you mentioned, as far as touching on body image issues and feeling like you're only seeing these people in these 16:9 ratio boxes every single day, and then seeing your reflection, definitely over time it has the possibility for people to have this skewed idea that maybe there's something wrong with me, or just having different ideas. And so even if you're starting to notice these things, don't be afraid to question and ask people, hey, what do you think about this? Or is this accurate? Because even if somebody says, well, I don't see that at all, it doesn't mean that your feelings are wrong. It just might mean that it's worth exploring with a parent, a caretaker, or some other adult that's in your life.
I would add, one of the things I've noticed with our two daughters is that there are certain things that seem to trigger those feelings more so than others, right? And so kind of learning for yourself and helping your friends understand what are those things that bring out those feelings, right? So for my daughter, one of the things we realized in talking with her therapist, but also just kind of doing some self-discovery, was that social media was something that she was like drawn to, but also that really made her struggle with her body image and with her sense of connection to people, and that awareness that, like, wow, somebody's out doing something today and they didn't call me, right? And now I feel left out, which if I hadn't been on Instagram, I wouldn't have noticed. So all of those sorts of things, kind of finding your threshold for what you are willing to invest in those external platforms, or like those ways of connecting with people, and what isn't worth it for you. And I think that's true regardless of your age. I mean, even for me, I spend hours and hours and hours on Zoom, right? And I've had to tell myself, like, it doesn't really matter that much what I look like. Even though I see myself and I think, oh, probably should have done something differently with my hair. Like, you have to just be able to move on with those things. And that's easy for me to say at 50. It's harder when, when you're dealing with the social dynamics of being a teenager. But so I would just try to reflect a little bit on what are the things that you notice bring up those feelings for you, and then talk about those with your friends. Like, maybe there's a way for you to connect that does not include social media, that's a phone call, or that's, hey, we're going to go meet at the park and sit 10 feet apart and just, chat in a way that we would do at school, but that doesn't bring up some of those negative feelings that are sometimes associated with social media.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not that I need to add anything, but as a father, I would just want to say that communication, like Evan said, is very important, and working with people that you trust and that you know, and if there's nobody that that you trust, then start asking around. But it seems like in school. I'm thinking back to my kids, everybody had peers that they trusted, and we tried to keep relationships at home open, although sometimes it was hard, but definitely communication is very important, and yeah, definitely don't rely on virtual friendships. So we got to find some way to stay connected in the same room, or at least outside with somebody. At this point, that's probably the best way to stay connected.
Actually, I'm going to just add one other thing. Sorry. Also, think about some of those things that you really like about yourself and celebrate and spend more time on those things. So my youngest daughter is a musician, and when things are tough and she's feeling isolated, going and playing the guitar or sitting down at the piano, really, it reminds her that there's a whole life for her that is not just dealing with COVID and the isolation from her friends, right? So spending some time celebrating that side of you, whether it's drawing or painting or reading or things that you just enjoy doing, that you can do with, a friend, a family member, or on your own, but just kind of remind you of who you are inside, not just in dealing with your peers.
Thank you. I'll do my best to remember all this.
So I can take the next question. So for school, it's hard to sometimes manage having multiple different classes on different days. So currently for my school, we have 2 classes per day, each 75 minutes. Some classes give close to no homework, and then others give almost too much. So I was wondering how you could deal with it, like having too much on one day and having too little on another day, and how to like almost balance it out.
Rudy, you want to start with that one?
I can start with that. I mean, so a couple of things. First and foremost, I would say reach out to your teachers. Teachers really care about you. I think sometimes they're stuck between wanting to give you things that keep you challenged and make you motivated and keep you moving forward, and then not wanting to overwhelm you. So I think if you share that with your teachers, sending them an email or, you know, posting it in a chat, or if you're using Canvas, you can send them a Canvas message. It's a good way to just let them know, hey, I don't know if you realize, but this other teacher that we also have on this same day is also giving us a lot of homework, and maybe they can communicate so that they can balance each other out. But at least they might be able to just give you some grace and say, hey, you know what, don't worry about it. Take till Monday. It's not that big a deal. I think most teachers, you know, they just want to do what's helpful and right. And if they don't know, they can't adjust. So that would be my first step, is to let them know. And then the other thing is, in all of this, I think the most important thing that I want students to not lose sight of is that, yes, you know, school is important, but your own health and your mental health is way more important than the grades you're getting, right? So you always want to keep a balance on, like, school doesn't define you, your grades don't define you, right? Like, you want to, yes, do your best, but recognize that, like, sometimes doing your best is doing the best for you as a person, and pulling back and saying, you know what, I'm doing all I can do right now, and I'm going to take a break because that's what's best for me. And the people who know you and care about you will understand that. And the benefit you have right now, being in middle school, is that you know, your grades don't really matter, right? Like, so you're in middle school, it's not part of your high school GPA, it's not part of your college applications and all those things that create a lot of pressure for students. So it's really important that you learn right now how to manage that stress and how to make time for who you are as a person and not let it overwhelm you.
Definitely, I want to echo those same sentiments, you know, and it kind of goes back to really looking at, you know, you have to take care of you. And so I think one of the things in reading the questions beforehand, so yes, I kind of cheated a little bit, looked at the questions. I actually was wondering, Chris, you know, how old you were when I was reading that, because it is such a different system for so many people. Whereas for some high school students, they're used to a block schedule and they're used to kind of having this rotation. And I 100% agree. I think there is something that I usually will tell the people that I work with is, I know for a fact, even though I say that blindly, that most parents and caretakers, and myself included, would much rather go to bat and advocate for a student after knowing that they worked as hard as they possibly could in an assignment. And if because they had to go to bed to take care of their health and well-being, they weren't able to finish or wake up early to finish or some other way just to finish it, I can't think of a single adult that I know that would not be the first person after you self-advocated saying, hey, this is what happened, that wouldn't back you up and then be able to say, yeah, help us to understand that in the future, how can we best help our student be successful? Because sometimes we do have to learn through these many failures that aren't really failures to be able to know how to succeed in the future. But it really does come down to just knowing that if you put in your best effort and you really tried, that's really what anybody is looking for. You know, you're developing the work ethic to learn that what works best for you. And so, correct. So grades aside, if you know that you have a very little bit of work on one day and then all of a sudden you learn the next day you have a ton, before you panic, it's really important to look at, okay, well, what's in my control and what's not in my control. And sometimes that helps by writing down on a calendar or writing down on a notepad, okay, if I know that it typically takes me 30 minutes to read 15 pages, you can kind of write that down. And then you can start to map out how you're going to manage your time the best. So that way, those overwhelming amount of assignments don't feel as overwhelming. And even if you are questioning, well, will somebody else back me up if my teacher says, oh, well, too bad, you should have done it, then 100% go to your caretakers, go to the adults in your life and say, this is my situation. If I am working, will you please be there to support me? And I can guarantee you they're going to say yes. And so it's really also trusting that in your support system, you know, you have that backup, but really finding your voice and be able to reach out to your teacher initially and let them know the situation really puts you ahead of the game overall.
I was going to touch on, and you guys did touch on it already. Don't stress yourself out. I know you're under a lot of pressure, but like Evan said, one of the things I wanted to mention was control. You only have control over what you can control. And I keep hearing people say, we're not running a sprint, we're running a marathon. So just, you know, pace yourself at your pace. I'm not saying that sometimes it's not going to be more difficult than others, but part of time management is when you find that you have downtime, you can learn to be proactive in trying to get ahead of something that you know has been in that downtime. So you know, I'm not trying to add more pressure, but sometimes you can do a little bit of proactive planning when you're trying to manage your time. I know it's a weird concept I have never had to study, you know, at home with my family, you know, in the next room. It's hard enough for me to work from home, so I give you guys a lot of credit. But yeah, don't stress yourself out. Do the best you can, and talk to people.
Thank you.
All right, I will take the next question. So where is, all right. So it's resuming after school activities. A lot of my friends are resuming sports or dance classes. And I talked to one of them who did track. And I asked, you know, are you wearing a mask? Are you social distancing? They say they don't have any rules. They don't have to wear masks. And they say we're outside, so it's okay. Or they say, oh, my immune system's tough enough to handle COVID. But how can we tell them as nicely as possible, you need to stay safely apart, you need to wear a mask, and you are not immune to COVID?
Are all of us silent for the same reason? Okay. If I'm being 100% honest, that is a really hard question to answer, especially I think as an adult. The main reason being is because I think the main thing I would want you to take away from what I'm going to say is sometimes we can't force what we think or feel to be right, or even if in our families or in our lives we know to be right, we can't force that upon other people. And so I would really kind of encourage you more so, instead of trying to figure out the best way to convey that message to them, maybe finding the best way to have a conversation with them about what you're concerned about and maybe why they're not as concerned as you. You guys may hear quite often how, you know, this subject has been politicized in the adult world. And so that's why when I say it's really hard to answer this is sometimes, you know, keeping our own personal opinions aside to be able to convey a message in a way that it's going to be heard is a really tricky thing to do. And so as much as I would love to say there's a super nice way to say what you just did, I think it's, you know, your friends best. And so really being able to think about, okay, knowing my friends, they love and care about me, how can I say this so that they know that I still respect them and I will still garner their respect? And then be able to kind of really convey, hey, this is why this is important to me and what I would really hope you would do. But then also knowing they may say, okay, I hear you, but okay, I'm going to do this. And then it's being able to look at, okay, well, what's important to you and your values and what you're going to do and making the best choice for your life moving forward.
Thank you.
And I guess I would add that, like, so yes, they are supposed to be the county guidance for small cohort activities like sports is definitely that they should be wearing a mask. So that isn't correct that they're saying that they aren't supposed to wear a mask just because they're outside. They should be wearing a mask. And that's something that their coach or whoever's in charge of their activities should be monitoring. But my mom still tells me today you catch more bees with honey than with vinegar, right? So people respond more to kindness and concern than they do to lectures. And that's always true no matter the age. And so maybe just, you know, saying, hey, look, I really worry about you. You know, I care about you. I want to make sure that you're healthy. As opposed to coming at it from a, like, what you're doing is wrong and against the law kind of perspective. Because most people, you know, as Evan said, most people don't respond to that. And especially depending on, you know, their home life and what they're hearing at home, they may have heard that, you know, it's not necessary or that it's not a real concern. And you don't want to get into that argument with them, right? So you're coming from a place of concern for them. And I think sharing that is really powerful.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, you know, and not to argue with anybody, confrontation is never the answer. It's never, it might be the answer sometimes. The world is a complicated place, but confrontation usually doesn't get you where you want to go. So like she said, honey instead of vinegar. It's really hard. We don't know what other people are thinking, and people act on their beliefs. Their behavior reflects what they've been told, or what they believe, what they trust in. And a lot of the times you can look at someone and say, boy, that person must be misinformed, but it doesn't give me the right to go, cut them down and put them in their place, because it's just going to be a confrontation that wastes everybody's time and gets everybody upset. We just have to do what we know is right, and do what we know is safe, and protect who we can protect. And if other people don't see that and don't believe that, then that's something that makes life hard.
Thank you for doing your best to answer a tough question.
How can getting out of the house positively impact anyone? So that means just going on a walk, going for a run, or like walking the dog or something. How could that have like a positive impact in like mental or like physical state?
Awesome question. I mean, I think for so long we've been talking about the importance of exercise and eating a balanced diet and eating healthy and just treating our bodies well for so long that we've gotten so used to thinking of balance in what was our old normal, and so now we have what is our new normal. And even though there's so much uncertainty tied to it, it is still equally important to keep your body moving, to get some exercise, make sure you're eating healthy. Because I would say one of the main things that I've heard from the majority of people I work with as this pandemic has continued is how each day tends to feel the same, that even if they have started school or they've started other activities, a lot of things still feel very much the same. And so anything you can do that is safe outside of the house to change up the monotony of each day, especially exercise, even if it's just going for a 15-minute walk, is extremely helpful. Primarily too, let's say you're stuck inside all day, or it feels like you're stuck inside all day. Only thing you're doing is work. Well, just getting outside and getting some fresh air, being in the sunlight, being able to expose yourself to the elements that on any other given day pre-pandemic you'd be exposed to is really reinvigorating. And so, doing stuff like that. So even if, you're thinking, oh, I should go run 3 miles, that might work for some people, but if that's not where you're used to, starting small is okay. So, if you have access to go swimming, whether it's at the beach or in a pool, if you have the ability to do these things safely, 100% I would encourage people to do it. I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to have either taken up mountain biking or have started hiking the trails, especially in our area, way more than they ever had in the past, let alone even know where some of these places are. So, also getting creative. So if you are able to stay in a small group with friends and socially distance, and say maybe do a scavenger hunt or doing something that is safe, on or a hiking trail, and looking for different plants, whatever it might be, but getting creative and thinking of ways just to kind of get outside of your room, especially, and then outside of the house. And even if it's not every day, at least every other day, just to kind of give yourself that change of momentum.
Absolutely. Can I jump in there? I got involved in this whole mental health world kind of through a lived experience, but what attracted me was the idea that we can do something about changing the dialogue on mental health and emotional wellness. The first goal in changing the dialogue is getting people to understand that physical health, that mental health is essential for overall physical health. So long sentence to make a short point, but part of what I promoted in our community after we had a traumatic experience was to take care of ourselves, to take care of each other, to engage with each other, to ask for help if you need it, and to watch for signs that other people may be giving you without verbal signs, but they may be giving you emotional or physical signs of maybe their emotional wellness is in a decay cycle where they're not doing so well. You can kind of pick up some hints, but relaxing and engaging and getting out in the sun or even in the rain if that's where you live, but getting out and doing something is just as important for your mental health as it is for your physical health.
I can add just a little bit that I think the change of scenery just kind of resets your mind, right? Like, so for me, I've started doing yoga and I'm like by no means fit, but it's just that a mindful activity that isn't being done at my house. So in the park near my house, there's a group that does it, and it's been so liberating, right? Because I love my family and we have a really good relationship, but you know, no matter who you live with, you fall into sort of patterns of interactions, right? Like, and I think that just getting outside of that pattern of interaction and the kind of resetting your brain is really, really healthy. And we got a puppy at the beginning of COVID, so that's also really helpful. He makes me go outside because he wants to go for a walk. So all of those sorts of things just help me, I don't know, remember that there is a whole world outside of my house that still exists.
So, one question that I've been thinking about is how can you sort of like prevent burnout? So, being inside all day or for most of the day just kind of like makes you feel burnt out by like the end of the week. You just like want to take a break or something. So, how can you kind of try and prevent that, but also like stay on task while doing work or school?
Let me start. I'll just say that don't feel like there's something unusual about you. This is a normal thing, okay? We're all feeling corona fatigue, and everybody's affected in different ways. So whatever you're feeling is normal, and don't start thinking there's something wrong with you. Just find ways, like we talked about, getting out, doing things. Sometimes you can do things in the house, reading, or I mean, some people have been binge watching things that put them in a nice state of mind. But whatever it is that works for you, but just realize that this is not normal. This is not something that we're designed to do, is live in a box and look at a screen all day. You know, we're designed to interact and hug people and do things for people and go places with people. And so just realize that it's just what it is for now. It is what it is, and we're just doing the best we can from day to day to get through it. Find out what the things are that work for you. Ask other people for ideas. If you're coming up dry on ideas, if you've tried everything and it doesn't work, there's going to be something out there that works for you on any particular day. So just, you know, stay positive, and it's hard to do, but we got to do it.
Well, definitely. So I'll kind of jump off of that as well. I mean, I think there's also that piece of really recognizing that with burnout, any of us, like we've already been saying, you can fall victim to it. You know, myself as a therapist, I can go into autopilot and not even realize that I'm getting burnt out based off how many individuals that I'm speaking with in a week. But one of the things that we talked about earlier that I think is equally important here is really doing some kind of check-ins with yourself and really being able to kind of sit and reflect a little bit and really ask yourself, okay, what do I need right now? What doesn't feel right? And like Michael mentioned, you know, maybe it is revisiting what other activities you can do and all of that, but also really looking at so many people I've heard and some people talk about, oh, I think I should have been more productive, or I should be productive. And I think one of the things that it's really, really important to know is that productivity is different for each of us. We're going to define productivity in very different ways. So if you're feeling burnt out, being productive very well may be that you zone out watching a movie that is just bringing you joy or brings you back to a place, you know, pre-COVID that you really enjoyed. Or it might be doing some activity, but also it might be just kind of sitting on your own, journaling, or just sitting in that space and not feeling like you have to do anything. So it's really being honest with yourself. Am I feeling like I should go because everybody is telling me to, or I'm feeling this pressure to do this? Or am I doing this because I want to and there's something I'm wanting to achieve? Because those are going to be different. If there's something you want to achieve and that you're going after, the burnout will most likely be a long way in the future, because this is something you're actively pursuing and you're engaged with, and it's going to produce a different effect. Whereas if you're just feeling like everything you're doing is a chore and you're just doing it for the amusement of other people or because people tell you have to, then definitely that's the time to really take self-inventory and really look at, okay, what do I need right now? How can I take time for myself? So giving yourself the okay to take a mental health day. Now more than ever is the time to say, you know what? I need to step away from my computer. Let me communicate with my teachers if you have to, if it's on a school day. Let me communicate with my caretakers on any given day and just let them know I need a day for me. And so, I appreciate you checking in on me, make sure I'm okay, but I may just veg out and be okay with just being you if that's what you feel like you need. But if you are a person who thrives off of doing things, then 100% you do you. Go do the activities you want to do. Make sure you create that time and space for you to do the things you enjoy. So that way the things that you have to do still maintain that feeling of, okay, there is a purpose and I am engaged and this is something that's important to me. Because for some individuals, they need that external motivation, because internally it's really hard to find the motivation to do something if they don't really believe in it or feel like it's going to benefit them.
And I would just add as a parent, show yourself some grace, right? This is hard. It's hard on adults. It's hard on all of us in different ways. And none of us are used to this. It isn't normal, right? Like it's gone on a really long time. All of those things sort of, individually they're hard, but cumulatively they're super hard because, you can kind of power through for a couple of months, but now we've been at this for a while and that's really, really hard. So just recognize that like no one's perfect. No one's got this locked down and figured out. And so just be nice to yourself, do something that you love and give yourself, like Evan said, I'm sure if you reached out to your teachers and just said, I am just feeling like I can't do any more right now, they would say, okay, let's figure out a way, like, I don't want you to fall behind, but like, let's figure out a way that maybe you just do what needs to be done and not all the other stuff. And then I'm a big fan of have one or two people that are part of your pod, right? And feel comfortable that like, if you have a friend or two friends who you have something that you love doing together outside, there are ways to be together outside that are safe. And so, take advantage of that. Go to the park, go to the beach, go for a walk. Because it really is important to just do something that is very different than school all the time, because you wouldn't do that normally, right? In a normal school year, you would not be just sitting at your desk for 9 hours a day staring at your peers. You would, have lunch, go to the library, have sports, PE, all that stuff. And right now, unfortunately, we aren't having any of those things. So it's really important to recreate as much as possible that social interaction.
Instead of a question, can I make like a statement, if that's okay? Or just something that's been on my mind?
You can do whatever you want. You're running this thing.
All right. So it's school related before COVID happened. I noticed it especially at our school. We have rules set in place, but they don't feel as strict, like dress code. I would go to school every day and see inappropriate things, but only one kid in the entire year would get dress coded, maybe for a logo on their t-shirt or something. And also with dress code, it's like substances like vaping. I've seen cigarette butts in the trash can in the 6th grade corridor. I've smelled it in the girls' bathroom. And I just want to I'm not trying to like be rude to our school, but I just want to know like those rules could be a bit more enforced, because I don't want to smell cigarette smoke every time I walk down the hallway.
So I'll tackle that one first, because it's something that I feel super passionately about. So actually, I worked really hard over the last year to get flavors banned in our county and in my city, because it's something that I saw a lot of when my daughter was in middle school. A lot of her friends started vaping, and we saw just not only how incredibly addictive nicotine is in that form, but also how few parents realize what's happening, right? Because it's just so hard to catch. And as a school district, I can tell you that we've, you know, I'm not part of your school district, but I'm assuming things are very similar there. Like, it's so hard to catch kids. I mean, we have kids who blow the vapor down their sleeve, or, you know, use all sorts of things to hide the scents. I am kind of curious, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm curious if something is different during COVID, right? Because those kids are home now, and I wonder, are their parents, you know, seeing this and dealing with this? It's a lot harder to get nicotine products when you're stuck at home all day with your mom. So I'm curious, like, is that changing? I mean, kids are under more pressure now than they were 2 years ago, but at the same time, it's a lot harder to get hold of those things. So maybe some of that will be better when you go back to in-person instruction. I don't have an answer. But I do think at the end of the day, what all of these things come down to is educating kids, right? Like, having them understand that not only does the use of things like, you know, vaped nicotine or vape THC, it's bad for your lungs, but it's also psychologically so bad for you in the way that it feeds anxiety. And, you know, we know it triggers lots of bad behaviors in young people that they think it makes better. So they, you know, they vape because they think it's going to relax them, but then it actually makes them so much more anxious. And so trying to just educate kids to avoid those things as much as possible. There are always going to be dangerous things out there that some kids want to try, and as a society, we're always trying to kind of play catch up. But I think it's a tough knot to untangle. And the more that we can do to just work with our youth to understand those implications and to give them tools to have those hard conversations with their peers, the more that I think we're going to untangle the knot. But parents also have to be allies in this, right? They have to be paying attention. I mean, I'll just tell you, so when my kid started vaping, she was using other people's addresses. She was doing all sorts of things that I never thought were possible, right? I'm a stay-at-home mom. I thought, I am so dialed in. And it was totally getting by me. So it is really hard. And I think parents need a lot of education to be able to be good, attentive kind of, you know, oversight on these things. But I'm sorry that it makes being at school uncomfortable for you, because that is not what anybody wants.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I just remembered it, but a lot of kids, or at least this one guy I knew, he got it from his older sibling, and he said, my sibling recommended it to me, and that's how he's been getting it. He's been getting it from his older siblings' friends or people they know, and I just went.
Evan, were you going to say something?
I wasn't sure she was done talking now because it kind of cut out. Literally done?
Yeah, I think she muted a bit early. She just wanted to say how accessible it was and how they were getting it.
Gotcha. So the only thing I'll add to that, and okay, so I'm gonna pause. Victoria, you can maybe edit this out if you want to, whatever have you. But Liv, one of the things that you definitely can do, and I think is important, is really put together your thoughts and really talk to your friends and talk to people that also have very similar views to you. So when we do go back on campus, you can meet with your school administrators and really voice your concerns and make sure you're heard. The part, Victoria, that was saying you might want to edit out though, is if I'm also not mistaken, in California in this next year, all flavored tobacco products will be banned. And so being able to also live yourself, being able to educate other students and even other people in our community about those topics is definitely something you can do. And it's not your sole responsibility, but I think just how you very eloquently shared like your concern, I know for a fact there's lots of other young individuals that share very similar thoughts. And again, when we come together, our voices are very strong. And I think that is something you can also do moving forward too.
All right, friends, we've gone a little bit over, but I do want to open up the space for any last closing thoughts, final thoughts. We will post all these amazing resources I see in the chat at an end slide in this video. But that's all great stuff. So closing thoughts, ideas.
I think first and foremost, thank all of you guys for kind of putting this together and being here tonight. And I would definitely like to say, Chris and Liv, if you guys are comfortable, I'd really like to be able to come back next time and flip this around a little bit and have a discussion with you guys to really hear about, what you guys would like to see or what's really kind of going on from your perspective as somebody who is a youth going through this pandemic, going through school, because I already couldn't imagine what it would be like to go back to high school, middle school, elementary school. And then once this hit, I'm even more kind of just like, oh yeah, I have no idea what things would have been like if I were in your position. So if you guys were open to it, I would definitely like for us to kind of flip this around a little bit and be able to ask you guys some questions, because I think even kids your age, older, adults even would love to hear what you guys have found to be helpful. Even if it's not you, your friends, the people that you guys know, I think you guys could also give us a lot of great advice.
Yeah, I'd be willing to have that conversation.
I love that idea. We'll make that happen, Evan.
I was just going to say thank you so much for, one, letting me be a part of it, but also sharing your questions. I mean, these are really great questions. I hope you guys know that, it takes a lot of courage to do this sort of thing, right? To ask people hard questions and to put yourself out there. But I think this is the only way you create change, is for people to understand what it's like for you right now, right? And amongst us, we're all happy to advocate for things that will make things better for you, but part of that is we have to know what those things are, right? And so for me, our school district has 16,000 students. I love hearing from kids because it helps me understand how what we're doing impacts them. But I really appreciate you taking the time and putting together those great questions, and I'm happy to help in any way. So if you ever have other questions, please feel free to reach out. I put my contact in the chat, and you're more than welcome to reach out anytime.
And me as well. I just want to thank you guys for having Given Hour on, and for inviting me, and for having somebody from the mental health. I know you guys, the other guests, are in the field doing the work. Given Hour is a nonprofit, like in this great alliance of agencies and organizations, foundations that do a lot of work in the background. And what we really, really, really want to do is help lift the stigma off of the conversation on mental health, and to elevate the topic of emotional wellness in every conversation. And anytime we have an opportunity to do that, and when it comes to difficulties in adulthood, a lot of the times it can be traced back to childhood. So the earlier we start, helping people understand that emotional wellness is not something to be ashamed of, that it needs to be a discussion that we're comfortable having, and just really appreciate the opportunity to be involved. Thank you.
First day over here. I didn't know how to unmute myself. Chris and Liv, anything you would like to say before we close? No. Well, I'm really proud of you guys.
They were great. And
it's going to be okay. And I'm really sorry. I'm sorry you have to live in this pandemic in this time. But it's going to be okay, because people like you are going to be our future. And I feel like I'm in good hands there.